All right, so this is what we have so far. I hit the space bar. Just comes in, we got the motion blur, we turn that on here, we animated both of these guys coming in. And I could even do a little motion blur on this one if I want. Once again, we would just click it here. The faster it goes, the more it's going to blur. So we could see we got a little motion blur, bam, boom. That one's moving really quick, so that's why we see that. And so now I want to animate this guy, but I want to do something special with him. So we're going to go to where we want this to happen. Let's say right here, it should be all finished. So I'm going to, on this one, open this up. And if you look, I can solo just that. That's what this solo button is. But if I open this up and we see these, there's an option right here for animate. So I have my text options, path, and I have my transforms, which are the basic ones we've been using, which is just the general transform. But on text, I have this little guy here, which allows me to animate the parts of a word or text per letter, per word, per line, sentence, whatever. So I can go in right here, and I'm going to click on animate. And it allows me, what do I want to animate? These are all things I can animate. I can animate the color of the stroke, the fill color, the width of the stroke, anchor points, position, scale, skewing, rotation, opacity, or just say, you know what, I want all of these up here. And I just say, for right now, I'm just going to say all. Boom. So I could do one at a time, but I just dropped these in, and even though I'm not going to use them, just so you can see them. So right here, I could animate opacity and stuff, and these are different from the regular transforms. The regular transforms affects the entire text object as a whole. Okay, so I'm not going to animate these. I'm going to animate these inside of Animator 1. And I can rename these if I have a whole bunch so that I could say, oh, letter intro or something like that, right? Which we might do. So the two I'm really thinking about is my rotation and my position. And then when I get this guy done, this one up top, the range selector, is what's really going to set this guy off. So let's close up these so we're not too confused. So I'm inside of the text layer. I went in and I added all properties. And then it created Animator 1 and all these guys right here that you can see. So you can see I can shift select and just add to the selection. But it basically added all this stuff inside of Animator 1. And then I could always add to it. That's another way of doing it. I didn't have to add all, but just so you could see these. So when I animate in here, there's a range selection of when that animation happens. The start and the end. The end is the ending position, which this is the ending position. Okay? But let's say I want these to fly in from the side before that other one just drops down. So I go to my position that's inside of the Animator 1 tab. So it's this one. And I'm just going to move this way off screen. Now that it's off screen, even though the position is still here, I've offset it by adjusting this interior position. And this guy, the end, is like, whoop, look at that. Oh, so cool. So let me explain what we just did. We basically we added where we wanted to end up. We moved it after we created an animation here, and we put in a animator and said we want all transforms properties, which created all of these. We then went into the position of this animator and we moved the position to where we want it off screen. This is left to right, this is up and down. And now when I open up my range selector, 100% is where it's supposed to be, but at 0, well, 0 is where we are there. So what I want to do is, now that I have this, let's key the end. Well, let's actually look at my timeline here. And let's say, right when this happens, I'm going to key it. So it's off screen. And then say, right before this, or as this guy pops in, I'm going to set this to 0. So let's see what happens. Spacebar. Boom. Now, if it's like, wow, that's a little too fast, we need more frames. Let's grab these, which is the motion, and move it over. And now I can take this one, this key, and move it over. So it's going to slow it down a little bit. So now, a little bit. I don't want it too slow, but I don't want it like so fast you can't see it at all. Let's move it a little bit further. Take this guy a little bit further. Let's try that. That's better. Maybe a little bit shorter. Right about there. Now that looks cool, but I want to do a few things. So right now it's just coming straight in there. You see that? So now let's do a rotation. Okay. So here's the rotation. Now this rotates it here, but this rotates it. How many revolutions do I want it to rotate by the time it goes from beginning to end? So let's say I wanted it to rotate 3 times by the time it gets there. And let's just see. So do you see them rolling in now? Look at that. Now, if I wanted to, so you can really see it, let's pull it out more so it has more time. And you can see them rotating as they come in. See? And for a nice little added touch, let's also add a motion blur to that. And let's tighten it up just a little bit. So let's start from the beginning. Motion graphics. Yay! So we created all these little sets, 3 different types of animations. One was the swooping shape. One where it was a little more complex with the letters flying in, and then one just dropping down, keying the position with a motion blur. And if I want to adjust these, let's take this, move it, grab these, move them over. How fast all this runs is going to depend on your computer. So if you hit spacebar and it's chugging, do you notice this green line? So anytime I move something, you notice this green line updates. And what that basically is it loading it into RAM. This is where having 16 gigs of RAM is really optimal. At the very least, 8 gigs, you're not going to be able to put as much RAM, and your machine's going to chug more, and that's where you would go into here for half quality, or maybe even a third of the quality. You see it's blurry, but it's going to load like super fast. And then when you go to render, you'd render out full quality, and it's going to take a while. So we have that, boom. And so before I crash or something weird goes on, I want to make sure I'm saving this. So let's do a file, save. And I want to navigate to where that folder is that I created. Okay. So let's go. Here's my folder. I'm just going to copy where that's at, or make sure. Paste it into here. And I'm going to go into the AE files. And let's just call this one AE demo 1 underscore anim text for animating text. And now it's saved. Okay. So now I should have done that earlier, but just got carried away. But now if I close, if it crashes, if it's whatever, I can always just open it back up. And I can test it out. Spacebar. Looks really good. Yay. So just a few different things I can do. And that's just with a shape. And we'll get into more stuff. So that is animating, or at least getting you started with animating some of the little quick text. We'll get more in depth of that, but that should give you a nice little basis.